Part 2 of the final 8, and the first game we're going to look at is the big one. It's the juiciest one. It's one of our Arsenal players that's done us proud, and we are completely proud of her as an Arsenal podcast, but I'm going to have to take my Arsenal hat off for that for the moment. But I'm joined again by Adam Salter and Matt Lorimer Roberts. How are you boys?
Tired. It's these podcasts just seem they're getting longer and longer every time. But no, I'm excited to do this one. There's a few fun shenanigans that happen in some of these games. I'm looking forward to going back over them again.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just feeling like we need to get on with it, so I'm looking forward to it. Let's get going now.
That sounds like you boys want to keep it short and sweet tonight. Wicked. So 0-0 at full time and added extra time. I did not watch this game because it was at silly o'clock in the morning. My sleep, I need my ugly sleep, so otherwise I'll be breaking everybody's screens, unfortunately. But audio listeners, you're safe. Don't need to worry about your phone screens. But we've got the first two. What were your thoughts on the game? I should say first before we jump into the most important part of the game.
It was an interesting one. Sweden, obviously they've gone through stroll for the group stage, 3 wins out of 3. USA came second to the Netherlands, and as we all know, were a couple of millimetres from going out when the ball hit the post. Millimetres being a very interesting choice of word, as we'll get to later. So they're obviously coming up against Sweden, two teams who have played each other many times in tournaments. They played at the Olympics where Sweden won. They played in the last World Cup where the USA won. And I think we can all agree the USA have been somewhat underwhelming. Lots of talk about being teams in transition, a lot of elder legends leaving, younger players coming through. Stars like, I think it's Sophia Smith, I think everyone said she's going to be the next big thing, and she looked pretty good against Vietnam. We all predicted quite confidently that Sweden would win. So there was a mixture of...
Is that a Vic Akers Wonderland smug team moment in that
There
case?
is a smug team one, but it didn't play out. We all thought it would be a score win. It didn't play quite the way we thought it would. And it was a mixture of, yes, everyone wants to see a giant fall, and the fall of the USA has been, we were hoping for it, going to have at some point. But genuinely, based on how the teams have played, Sweden hadn't been great, but they were really good on set pieces, whereas USA had sort of toiled a bit in front of goal. They'd only scored, about I think it's 4 goals. I think the last goal they scored was against the Netherlands. Didn't get a goal against Portugal. What we'll say is, across the game, I think the USA were the better side. They certainly had the better chances. Sweden didn't really have. I think their first effort on goal was in the 85th minute. I think most of the efforts were for Sweden. I think it was Lindsay Horan had a really good effort that was saved by Musovic. Musovic was the player of the match. She had the game of her life against the Netherlands. I'm just going to get the stats up. Yeah, so the USA 22 shots, 11 on target across the game, compared to Sweden, who had only 1 shot on target throughout the entire game. I mean, Sweden, it was very much, as the game progressed, back to the wall, defending, and there were some outrageous saves from Musovic to keep him in this. I think there was one right at the end where I thought the USA were going to score. It was inevitable, and somehow it was kept on. There were some headers, there were some shots. It was a dominant display by the USA. They were doing all the right stuff, but they couldn't score. And it was an improvement on the Portugal game, but the result was still the same. It was still a 0-0. And you did sort of think that the Swedes were playing for penalties. And as we know with Sweden, they have the history of penalties. They obviously got to the Olympic final against Canada. That went to penalties. They got themselves in a position to win the shootout, and it didn't go their way, and Canada ended up winning it. And I think the manager even brought that up as sort of if he went to penalties again this World Cup, they could sort of right that wrong. And obviously got that far. But yeah, it was a 0-0, but it wasn't a boring 0-0. And like I said, their goalkeeper, only the number 2 for Chelsea, we should add. She's behind Anne-Catherine Berger in the pecking order. But she was, as we talked about earlier, with likes of Daphne van Domselaar, brilliant goalkeeping performance. And yeah, one to remember. And I think that's one of the reasons why Sweden were quite confident against shootouts, because they probably thought, oh, Musovic will save one, which actually in the end she didn't.
It is a bit bizarre when you get to penalty shootouts. It's not when you're a goalkeeper. It's one of those ones where if you're professional, you're lucky enough because you get the data and things like that. So you get to know about where certain people tend to shoot, things like that. Whereas if you're in a tournament, you've never faced these opposition before. You don't know where they're going to go. That's at my level. But it's not just the luck of the draw. You just got to make sure that you go through your own processes. And Musovic had a brilliant game in the first 120 minutes. And I'm going to be honest. I'm going to bring up something about post match, because the fact that a Brazilian journalist turned around and asked about Ibrahimovic, it was a bit disrespectful, and someone actually turned around and said to him, really, and it was a bit bizarre, really. Apparently, they were only asking 3 questions to these players, and that was one of them.
What a waste of a question. There's so many great questions, and I'll also say there has been a history of this. There's been some comments. I think it's some of the cricket as well. The hundreds happening obviously at the same time over here. When it comes to some journalist questions, when it comes to football, there's some questions that you're in such a privileged position to ask a sports person a question on anything, and you waste it on nonsense like that, or you make a crass comment in a press conference. It's just up your game, or let another journalist in who actually knows the stuff come in and do it for you. But yeah, that comment was just so bizarre, and just there's so many great things you could ask about the game, but that was just complete nonsense.
But yeah, no, Musovic, player of the match. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. But we did go on to penalties in the end. The first 2 penalties, both for the USA and Sweden, were scored. That was the goal scorers for the US were Andy Sullivan and Lindsey Horan. For Sweden, it was Fredrik Rofo and Elin Rubensen. We get to the third one. Christy Mewis gets hers, but Natty Bjorn misses. Matt, is that something we normally see?
Bearing in mind that Bjorn plays for Everton as a centre-back.
Exactly. No, that is exactly why I came to you. I knew you was going to say it.
That's the bizarre thing. Why you let... Okay, Magda does take one, but that's beside the point. There must have been some method behind the madness. Was there a question about what... So with centre-backs, I think it's always going to be they're going to blast it into one way or another.
Like David Luiz.
Yeah, they'll either blast it top corner or they'll blast it over or wide, or it just won't. They're just not going to hit it into that bottom corner, because when in doubt, get it out, and they'll just hoof it down the other end of the pitch. It's what they basically do. That's what they're there for. But a bit bizarre, if I'm honest. I wasn't expecting her to score, but in my mind, I was thinking, oh, Bjorn of Everton. This will be interesting. I wasn't expecting it to be that interesting.
I think when it comes to defenders, it's probably more of the defenders is put themselves forward. Because unfortunately there are certain players who will hide in a penalty shootout, but I think this instance Bjorn was confident enough in herself that she wanted to take it. I don't think it would have been like a manager. I think she would have put herself forward. Now, if you do put yourself forward to take a penalty, then fair enough. We shouldn't put any blame at them. It is a bit of a lottery. It is a bit of killology and mental. And unfortunate instance, she did. Mentally she wasn't at it. And I think I always fear with at that point, the midway point when the first one goes in, that you do feel we know which way the shootout's going to go. Now they've slipped up. I think they were taking second. So the US had the lead, then you're thinking, right, okay, that's it then. The USA, it's a red carpet for them. All Rapinoe has to do is score to consolidate the win.
How wrong were you, Adam?
I know.
How wrong were you?
Megan Rapinoe coming off the bench. Yeah, Rapinoe off the bench. You're thinking, right, okay, years of experience, won the World Cup with the USA twice. No problem for her. She can do these in her sleep. And, I think it's still travelling, isn't it?
Just how? That is my question. I don't have any more words for that question. How?
What I think doesn't help is that she looked at it, she launched it over, and then she's looking at it and she's laughing about it, which has got a lot of the right wing people that have somehow popped up onto my timeline I've had
Bless
to
them.
mute them or get rid of them because they're irrelevant. I don't want to see rubbish like that, but it's almost like, oh, they're this, that, the other. I don't want to hear the right wing politics of the USA and this isn't the American team, this, that, the other. Yeah, I could say something else, but if I do, I will
It's
be
all right.
banished.
Lottie has already broken the swear word rule, so you're more than welcome to.
No,
The tower's burst.
if I'm honest, from some of their responses, I was
Do you know what? I threatened job applications for Adam so many times recently. Like, don't worry. He
To
thinks
be
I'm
honest,
joking as well. That's the funny part.
to be honest, I'm thinking I think she's able to laugh at it because if she laughs, it makes it less awkward for her.
Oh, absolutely.
But
Yeah.
it's just really awkward. But yeah, just a bit bizarre, really, that all of a sudden you get pop-ups of right wing agenda, this, that, and the other on your Twitter feed because all you're trying to do is enjoy a game, and then all of a sudden that happens, and just what random.
People on Twitter, they'll do anything for reaction, and they'll jump on it to force an agenda when, there's no substance to it. Rapinoe is an American utter hero for the amazing work she's done, and we knew this was going to be our last World Cup, and it is sort of tragic that with what was her last kick for our country, it went in that way for her. Sort of the rug very much got pulled out from under her feet. But that shouldn't take away from what she's done for her country. 2 World Cups, getting to a third final, and campaigning for equal pay for their team. You can't take that away from that. That's an incredible achievement for her. And yeah, from that moment on, the chaos just in the shootout, though, chaos just ensued.
Absolutely. I mean, the door kind of opened up for Sweden again, and then it was slammed in their faces as Rebecca Blomqvist. I think I pronounced that right. Apologise to my Swedish listeners. She had her saved, and then Sophia Smith decides to replicate the Rapinoe shot. I just don't get it.
This was the kick to win, wasn't it? This was the kick that would have won.
It was at this point where you knew sudden death was coming. I mean, how are you feeling at this point, Matt? You watched the game through as well.
I think as a neutral, you're kind of loving it because it's more drama. It's not funny when it's your team, though. Let's be honest.
Absolutely not. That is just stress. Yeah. I've done that twice within less than 24 hours. I don't want to do that again. Please.
Yeah, let's just say if this was like a Conti Cup final, Arsenal against Chelsea or something like that, we would not be loving if it ends up being sudden death and or any of this.
If I had to go through that again at Wembley again, I'd be sitting on the floor and not looking. I couldn't do it.
Penalty shootouts are only fun for the neutrals who have no stakes in it whatsoever, and just say, well, I'm going to pick a side and hope that side wins. You cannot enjoy them if you are emotionally invested in one of the team. That's why, for me, one of the most fun penalty shootouts to watch is when I think it was Man United versus Sunderland in the League Cup, and everybody was having penalties saved. They were missing them. It was 2-1. It finished the lowest score penalty shootout I've ever seen, and Sunderland won, which is even funnier. But it was just sheer stupidity. Like, no one could score, and that for me was most entertaining shooter I've ever seen. But Arsenal ones, they're traumatic. They're awful. They're stressful. Being a Swedish fan, watching that particular shootout would have been absolutely terrible. And like we said, Sophia Smith had the chance to actually win it. I mean, I thought that moment, I thought surely this is it. I was Team Sweden for the shootout, and I just thought, I can't believe it. And then she does and blaze it wide and shows her youth there and an experience, blaze it wide and thinking, right, okay, Benison, please, for goodness sake, just hit the target, just score. Please, Benison, just
and it was back to 3-3 again, wasn't it?
It was back to 3-3, and I'm thinking, right, it's on now.
And then Magdalena Eriksson and Alyssa now step up, makes it 4-4.
Yeah.
And then it's another dramatic twist. Kelly O'Hara steps up.
Yeah.
Keeper goes the wrong way, and she still hits the post.
I knew.
It was an open net. It was
in my WhatsApp group, and WhatsApp group with some friends. We were following the shootout, and Kelly O'Hara stood up. I said, "This is the one. She's going to miss." And the reason for that is because she was subbed on to take a penalty.
Oh, can I just say something? Your mock has worked for once in the right direction.
I know. It's great. But
I'm actually praising it for you for once. I'm not saying no. Shut up.
as in a group, I said this is the one because she's come off the bench to take a penalty. And I know obviously Miris did score her penalty, but I always feel that I have no confidence in as we saw with the Nigeria shootout. Nigeria brought some players on to take penalties and one that missed. I never have any confidence in penalty subs. I don't know why managing system doing it. And yeah, when O'Hara stepped up, I thought, right, this is the one. If USA are going to miss, this has to be it. And she did miss. I thought, right, okay, Sweden have a kick to win it. We need someone reliable. We need someone who we know is going to bury this penalty and not go any stress. And then I saw Lena Hurtig.
Before we go on to that, though, I generally thought that the penalty spot was actually cursed because the amount of misses that was coming off. I thought
it was bizarre. Five misses.
It was insane.
5 misses and a shoot. Well, four misses and 4 misses and a save, wasn't it? It was very bizarre.
A save one.
But yeah, Lena Hurd steps up and I think, right, oh my goodness, this. I mean, like her season.
I think this is one of the strangest penalties I've ever seen.
Oh,
like initially, Alyssa Nair, she pushes the ball away and then it bounces off the crossbar and comes back down to her.
Right.
And it's like this mad scramble for it.
Right.
And then it goes over the line. The first thing that happened was Lena's hand went up. That went over the line. She could see it from there. And she just held her celebration. She was holding on to a single strand of hope. And it was just the tension. And I was sitting on the edge because at this point, I was sitting in the pub before the Wembley game. I was thinking like, oh, please. Please.
Yeah.
And then everyone's looking at me like, what are you watching? And I went, the USA, Sweden, they're on penalties. The USA could be going home, leave me alone, go away. Because obviously it was a massive Arsenal social. And I was sitting there, please. And it's just, I think my main question was the semi-line goal technology and the VAR used smartly in this situation. I think.
Yeah. I've got a bit weird with this one because I saw a clip online a few days ago and it was a penalty in the shootout that got taken. And I can't remember. I don't know if it was in Ireland or if it was in some lower league teams around the world.
It might have been the Champions League or Europa League.
It wasn't a major competition. It may have been one of them lower qualifying games, but apparently shootout happened. I think the ball hit the strike was taken and it was saved by the goalkeeper or it hit the bar. The goalkeeper's gone away cheering, thinking you've missed. It's bounced down. The backspin has taken it into the net, and that was just sort of thinking in my mind and in the shootout. And then obviously this Hurtig incident happened. And I did hear something about apparently a keeper can't make a save twice in a shootout. There's something I heard about apparently, like because she makes 2 saves, she saves it. The ball is then going behind her, and then the keeper dives back to save it. Apparently, a keeper isn't allowed to do that. I don't know. There's just something in a podcast I heard about that. I thought that's a bit interesting.
Essentially, as soon as the ball is touched by the goalkeeper, the ball is then active again. So if it does have any backspin or anything, like that one did, the keeper can try and make a save for it. But I wasn't. This is where I was a bit confused about how VAR and come into it. I thought it was going to be goal line technology.
It was.
It's over. But it went down to, as Lottie has mentioned, the VAR, a semi-automated line system.
I think because it was so close. The decision to actually go line. There had to be a stop to hang on a minute, guys. Here, this is so close. We need to be absolutely definitely sure. And it's the closest. It's the closest goal line technology moment I have ever seen. And I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about it. They were millimeters from going out when the ball hit the post against Portugal. Well, this time their millimeters worked against them. And I am so happy. I cannot really say this. I am so happy for Lena Hurtig because she had such a awful season at Arsenal for reasons mostly beyond her control, with injury, with form, struggling to find a place in the team. Still hasn't scored a WSL goal yet. She's only scored in the Champions League and in the FA Cup, and whenever she's on the pitch, she's had such bad luck. And I'm so happy that she's had this moment of redemption, this moment of this is my moment to sort of celebrate. And it happened in the most Lena Hurtig way. It wasn't a straightforward top bins. It was a deflection of the keeper. It was a ball just over the line, but didn't matter. Of all the players in all the world, it was Lena Hurtig that slayed the USA, giant. Who would have believed? Who would have believed the tournament? The one player would have been Lena Hurtig to beat the USA and end their winning run in the World
To
Cup.
be honest,
And
my money would have been on Stina Blastenius, but obviously she was taken off.
she was subbed off. Yeah, that would have been nice for her. But I really hope that going beyond the World Cup, when Hurtig comes back to Arsenal, I really hope this gives her a G up, a boost, gives her some confidence going into next season.
And then she'll be on fire and form.
Well, we'll see how she does in the World Cup. Maybe she can get maybe a few goals as well there as well. But yeah, amazing moment for Sweden. And as for USA, it's interesting now. Is that the end? I don't know. I think there'll be a lot of introspection and review after this tournament, because this is the first one they've gone out in the last 16, and for the Americans, that is simply not good enough. I think there's a lot of. I don't think it's the end for them, but it's certainly the end of an era, and it does open the door for someone else now.
Absolutely, and that is all for this half. We will see you on the other side after this quick break.
Units ball in. Chance for Yankee maybe! 2-0 England! Going through to the quarterfinals of the World Cup!
And I hope you enjoyed that short break. Our next game, logically, would be England vs Nigeria, but we have done a whole separate pod for that, so make sure you go and check out that episode. It was put out the other day. Special guest Sophie and G, and our guest co-host with us as always is G. Had so much fun on the pod, but please go back and check it out if you want to hear a bit more on our thoughts on England and how they scraped past the Super Falcons. But we're going to move on to the next game, and it is our hosts Australia v Denmark. It was a little bit. My interest sort of peaked in this one. Because you've obviously got ex-Chelsea teammates meeting up in the likes of Sam Kerr and Pernille Harder, but we didn't know she was going to come back, so we'll get onto that a little bit later. But in the first sort of 17 minutes, Pernille Harder was absolutely sensational. I do enjoy her as a player. I can now appreciate her a bit more now she's out that lovely Chelsea shirt. So in the 11th minute, Pernille Harder shows the danger that she represents as she arrives into the defence of the Australia players. She can't get a tackle in before they can't get a tackle in before Harder thumps it home with a wide effort. Then she's back at it again 6 minutes later. Pernille Harder cuts on the inside to the left to find a gap between the two Australian players and goes for goal, but there's not enough power on it, so Mackenzie Arnold just simply scoops it up, and that was the end of that. Matt, do you think there was a lot of pressure on Pernille Harder in this game to create something? As there's so many promising technical players within Denmark that were getting into those positions, but nothing was coming of it.
This kind of reminds me of the Euros, where everything seemed to be give it to Harder, and Harder will get the opportunities and she'll score the goals. There was no plan B. This is the problem with Denmark. Denmark are very one-dimensional compared to the others that were in the last 16. Even the ones that have gone out, there was something, I'd probably say bar Switzerland actually, that do have some sort of game plan when it comes to scoring goals. I don't mean to be too harsh on Switzerland there, but it just feels like no matter what you have with Denmark, as talented as those players are, they are brilliant at what they do, and they have been good at producing some top quality players. It just seems to be the plan was get Harder the goal. That's it. Goal, done, dusted, and that's it. That's game, set, match. There doesn't seem to be a plan B. And if I'm honest, I'd be kind of hoping that Harder decides to retire now from international football. I know she's still young, 29, but I just for the sake of the national team, they kind of need to move away from her.
No, I think you're right there, Matt. It's a bit similar with the Lea Volti sort of Switzerland. You've got one really good player above the rest of the team, and Harder is so good. I also look at Bunny Shaw and Khadija Shaw in Jamaica. You do worry though, obviously, if you did take Harder out of the team, how far Denmark would sink without her. She's very much keeping the team up with her goals. But it makes her one-dimensional, where it's just feed Harder, just hope she'll do something. A bit like how England became with Ellen White for a while, where it was just Let's just keep giving the ball to Ellen White. She'll get the goal. She'll get us through the Olympics. She'll get us through the World Cup. And you need much greater balance if you're going to win the World Cup. You need the goals spread around you. You can't rely on one person to take you through a tournament. And, like with Switzerland and again with Denmark, I think, there's a very bad drop-off in talent, which is exposing them. And, Harder is basically a big sticking part of a lot of cracks in that team. And if you were to start playing Denmark without her, maybe then it would force them to do something about it.
No, absolutely. She's definitely the glue that's holding a team that's on thin ice together for me at the moment. But we're going to get to the most exciting part for me. Another Arsenal star takes the spotlight at 29 minutes when Ricky Sevek plays a poor cross for Denmark. Ford collects the pass. It passes over to Mary Fowler. Mary Fowler looks up. She spots Caitlin Ford making her run. And she makes a sublime pass over to her. First touch Caitlin Ford gets. And then she slots it home for her first goal of the tournament. The build up, and then that turn in the centre circle from Mary Fowler was absolutely brilliant. I believe it was Caitlin Ford's 13th attempt to get a goal.
You stole my stat. I'm annoyed now.
13 times lucky in this case instead of unlucky. Oh, sorry, Matt. Till this point, Adam, do you think Denmark were in full control?
That's the impression I got when this.
Are they going to kick themselves at this point?
It's difficult to say. What was it? 29? Was it they were scored? Was it the 29th minute? So they had a good 20-25 minutes when they had them at 0-0. I think that's the impression I got listening on the radio. Obviously, watching on the highlights, it's rather different. Yeah. But Denmark certainly had their chances, and you are against the host nation. They got the crowd behind you. If you're going to strike, you've got to make it count. They didn't. But the pass from Fowler, for me, it's the pass of the tournament so far. It's an incredible pass that just completely wipes out the entire Danish team. And Ford raced onto it, and all she needs one touch to take under a spell, and then it's a very clever shot across the keeper, bottom corner. And I think from then on, Australia were away, and Denmark just had absolutely no answer. It was a beautiful piece of footballmanship from Mary Fowler. Makes you wonder why we don't see her much at Man City, and then you remember who's managing Man City.
It raises so many questions over this tournament. Matt, can I get your thoughts on she's red, she writes, she loves her Vegemite's goal?
Well, I've been sort of questioning this a bit about sort of the young player. Mary Fowler's probably going to be up there for young player for me because she's been doing very well and she's been very consistent. She hasn't stolen the spotlight like other players at this tournament, but she's done brilliantly well, and that was one hell of a pass. Just to split the defence like that. It's not often we see Caitlin Ford running in behind like that. It was almost like Roadrunner-esque, where she just so all of a sudden she's found meat mode, and then she's just gotten on the end of it and decided, right, okay, I'm making sure this one's going in. 13 times the charm.
Absolutely. I keep saying that. That's my word. I need to reduce down. Second half kind of rolled it out at 1-0 to Australia, and then we sort of come back and we got to 69th minute. All of a sudden, the Stadium Australia absolutely roars. But who is on that sideline warming up? None other than the poster girl, Sam Kerr. She definitely made riled the crowd, that's for sure. They saw her warming up, and then all of a sudden she's getting rid of her bib. She's walked halfway around the pitch just to get the Australian fans on her feet.
Yeah.
How do you think she fared coming back from injury? I know it was minimal minutes, but how do you think she fared, Adam?
I think she did all right. I think it was 10 minutes off the bench. Listening on the radio, you could hear how much she means to the crowd. She is the poster woman of the tournament. It would have been nice from a footballing narrative host, perspective, if she managed to get a goal off her own. I think that would have taken the crowd over the edge if that happened.
That is coming. It's coming.
I know. Yeah,
it's coming. We know this is Sam Kerr.
And it's going to be against England. I just know it. But It would.
They got
it's
to get
important
past
that you
France first.
Well,
And we've got to get
spoilers,
past
by the way.
Colombia.
Spoilers. It's massive
Adam,
for
are
her
you
to get minutes.
a time traveller?
No, just we haven't revealed what's happened
He's
in the
got his
France
hoodoo.
Morocco match yet. We haven't revealed what happens in the France Morocco match yet.
Yeah, no,
So we can't say for sure.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
It's massive that Sam Kerr gets minutes again, because I think there was this feeling I was thinking, crikey, it was 2 games, but then she hasn't come out in the 3rd game. She hasn't been out in the last 16. She hasn't started that game. You're thinking, crikey, is she going to be out for the entire tournament? No, she's on the pitch. She's, had a run around. Only 10 minutes, mind, which makes you think maybe we'll get to the next quarterfinal, whoever they play. She probably won't start that one. But massive for the tournament to see. A lot of people have come to watch Sam Kerr. She is, the icon of this tournament. To not have her play would have been a travesty. Massive confidence boost for the team, for the players. So we'll see how that happens next.
No, of course. Thing is, we're getting goals from all over the pitch from them at the moment. We all know how Sam Kerr plays. She's a goal hanger. She hangs around in the right time, right place. Whether she's offside or not is a different story. What does it mean, Matt, for the goals from Australia now? Will they just funnel it through Sam Kerr, or will they be taking the chances to get those goals like they have through Hayley Raso?
I think that they now realise that they don't have to rely on one person anymore. It's almost like they've had to have a meeting to sort of come together and say, oddly enough, I did start watching the Matildas documentary. So it almost seems like Gunnarsson, the manager, he's basically took them aside. He's almost sort of seen what's happened at the Asian Cup and gone, right, okay, from that experience, I need to plan to make sure what happens if Sam Kerr's not available, and he's made this contingency plan. It's almost like we're going to have, if we get that semi-final between England and Australia, and I'm saying that's a big if at the moment because of the way that these two teams have played, have been very different. It's almost going to be a battle of the mind, and it's going to be basically the ultimate chess match between these two managers. And but anyway, yeah, to your point, I think that they if there's more ways that they can score. We know that Steph Catley's always is wonderful with set pieces and penalties. She's top goal scorer at left back at the moment of the World Cup. So it just goes to show you wonderful by chance, wonderful in nature, and just wonderful to be able to do that. And the fact that I think she really enjoyed her time as captaincy. If she carries on into the next match as captain, that's going to be wonderful for her. If Sam Kerr is fully fit and able to play, then she's not going to complain, and she'll feel happy to pass on the armband to Sam Kerr. But there's plenty of goals to go around, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Speaking of goals,
just going to add on that. You're talking about Pernille Harder and the fact that she's very much a one-player team in Denmark. I think it shows maybe a wake-up call to Denmark. You can lose your best player. I say in chess terms, you've lost your queen, but the rest of your chess pieces are just as valuable. And then I think there is an element of elevation with this Australia team because of it.
No, absolutely, you're spot on there, and I've said it again. 71 minutes. Speaking of goals, Kyra Cooney-Cross passes through to Mary Fowler. She then has a clever clip over to into Emily Van Egmond, who, with her back to the goal, tees up Hayley Raso and into an arrow for a clinical finish into the back of the net. How incredible has Hayley Raso been this tournament, considering 5 years ago she had a severe back injury and they never thought she'd ever play again.
I mean, she's sort of becoming the player I think maybe we all thought Sam Kerr was going to be at this tournament. She's becoming that elite goal scorer that they needed. And yeah, she's having an amazing tournament. I mean, that back injury, it completely wiped her out. And thankfully, it looks like she's managed to get past it. Again, another player that we saw at Everton. I'm sure Matt could talk for hours about how good she was at Everton. But then obviously she went to Man City and Gareth Taylor and sort of faded into obscurity. The only thing we remember sort of doing was scoring a really good goal in the FA Cup final, which is actually worth getting back to watch if you can. But it's another infuriating case of, where was this player at Man City? I'm really, really happy for Heli Rasso. It's a brilliant finish. Really well worked actually by Van Egmond. Could have backheeled it, could have tried to swivel in a shot, but saw Rasso, who was in the better position. And from that moment, Denmark had no chance, and that completely killed the game. But yeah, Rasso is definitely. We all thought Sam Kerr. It was all going about Sam Kerr FC. All feed Sam Kerr and Sam Kerr will score. No, it's the likes of Rasso, likes of Fowler, it's likes of Ford. These are the players who have stepped up into the breach and are having a major impact. And Steph Catley on penalties, which also helps. But yeah, Heli Rasso, having a very strong tournament, and they'll need her in that upcoming quarterfinal.
No, absolutely, Matt. What do you think we can expect in the quarterfinals when Australia turn up against France? Spoiler alert.
Well, that is going to be the question, because France haven't really had much of a threat for themselves, and I think Australia will be their biggest threat. I think a bit similar to Australia themselves. France are going to be the toughest opponents they'll have, because for them, this was the game against Denmark was a walk in the park. Just talking about Rasso, we're going to see more of her in the Champions League with Real Madrid, not at Man City anymore. So maybe that's also that's the chains unleashed, and she's sort of been able to get that freedom, because she knows come next season, now that she's signed, Real Madrid must be licking their lips and going, you know what, if it doesn't work out, we might be getting it and being able to get a couple of.
Can you imagine Rasso playing alongside Caicedo? Whew, that's going to be fun football.
Don't forget, she's got Caroline Weir with her as well, so that's going to be even more of a fascinating watch next season.
Exactly, and that is it for this segment. We will be back with Colombia and Jamaica in just 2 ticks. Back to part 3. We are now back with the Colombia v Jamaica game. Well, it should be Jamaica v Colombia, because Jamaica were the home team. This game was a really, really scrappy in the first half for me. Really just back and forth physical football, technical football in there. There was only one shot on target the whole first half, and that was from Colombia. But it was saved. But we got into the second half, 51 minutes. Ana Griezmann with a throw to Leslie Santos. It was passed back to Ana Griezmann, and then the cross into Catalina Usme, who escapes Denisha Blackwood after her first touch, takes a left-footed shot to the bottom left corner. Adam, can we talk how insane the width of this cross was?
It's a huge switch of play. We should make it clear, Jamaica, they had, up until this point, had not conceded a goal at all at this World Cup. In a group that contained France and Brazil, they kept 3 clean sheets. That is just, amazing defensively. But at the same time, you have to offer a bit of a threat. And sadly, I think which Jamaica's undoing, as we'll talk later, they haven't offered any. And Colombia were the ones to finally make that breakthrough. It's, like I said, a superb switch of play, loops over the defender who is caught ball watching, doesn't know who's behind her. And it turns out the player that is behind her is Usme. Really good first touch under control, and then driven across the keeper, bottom corner. And I'd probably say, Colombia, out of the 2 sides in this World Cup so far, they've been the more enterprising team going forward. Helps when you've got a player like Caicedo in the side, pulling the strings and pulling worldies out.
Also Catalina Usme, and as well as Myra Ramirez. I'm impressed with all 3 of them. I think they're absolutely brilliant.
you are becoming an honorary Colombian as this podcast progressed through the World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a brilliant finish, and it was going to take something special like that because, like I said, Jamaica defensively have been very strong at this World Cup. It's what's got them to this point in the tournament. The question was, they went a goal behind, is could they react to that? Could they find a way back into the game? Especially when you got a forward like Bunny Shaw, you think maybe we'll have a chance. There is some quality in attack there, but as it transpired, that's all it took really to beat Jamaica. They didn't really have a response to it.
I'm actually going to counter that because I do at the 54th minute, Matt. I know you're watching this game. Aisha Blackwood crosses the ball in. Rebecca Spencer can't get her hands to it. And it falls onto line and it is cleared by the. Oh my God! I've actually confused myself. It is cleared by the defence. Jodie Brown almost gets her head to it in that chaos. How much panic was in that box at that point, Matt?
If there was any more panic, there would have been a Panic at the Disco. It did feel like Jamaica have been solid for the first half at the very least, and then whatever happened, it was almost like Colombia had just sort of been holding back a little bit. I know they had a couple of opportunities in that first half. Lisa Rodriguez has been a standout for me, alongside, as Lottie's already mentioned, Rodriguez and not Rodriguez, Casido and the other forwards.
Ramirez.
Ramirez.
I've got the name right in front of me. I'm a donut. So
and also Catalina Usme.
Yes, thank you. I do apologise for Usme. But it was gonna. I have a feeling that Jamaica were, yes, they were defensively sound, but it was almost like they're undoing at the end of it because there was no. Okay, I can understand that they were kind of happy in that second match to make sure that they had something to play for, especially because they didn't have their star player in the Reggae Girls in Khadija Bunny Shaw. But it's actually quite funny. Actually, a lot of these Jamaican players actually are from England or play in the WSL, and it just feels very bizarre, really, that you have Tottenham players playing at international level, and they very much Spursed it up and nearly did then, and that would have been their World Cup. I don't know if Bunny Shaw would have been able to, or Khadija Bunny Shaw would have even been able to get herself into any position to sort of help out the team. But this is again, it is a problem when you do have one star player, and you need everyone else to be part of that. I know the Reggae Girls are a tight knit group, but there isn't really a standout performer in that team. You've got players in there that are actually playing at the championship at the moment.
The thing is, they've earned the right to be there. So I think it doesn't matter where they play. It's like you can look at the Colombia team. Most of them play in Colombia. There's a few who play in Europe. Mayra Ramirez plays for Levante in Liga F. You've got Linda Casado at Real Madrid. And I know Daniela Montoya has been picked up by Arsenal, Chelsea and Man United as a possible transfer to the WSL. But they've all earned the right to be there, regardless of where they are currently playing. I am going to kind of switch it up to the 65th minute for Linda Casado. She went down the left-hand side, one-on-one with Tierney Wiltshire, chased by Atlanta Primus as well. Switches the ball off her left foot to the right and squares it to Mayra Ramirez. Bad first touch and it goes out. Adam, could she have squared it a little bit sooner for a guaranteed tap in?
Yeah, you watch it back. It's a bit of a sort of miss of one or the other. You feel either because it looks really bad on Ramirez. It looks like she's absolutely fluffed it, but I do feel the ball to her wasn't the best. I think Casado has to get her eye up sooner and see that Ramirez is there for the tap in. I think she probably leaves it too late. The ball to her is not good enough. and it sort of bounces off and the chance is gone. And it was only 1-0. As it turns out, would say 1-0 was enough, but something like that would have given them the breathing space to get the game out and not be the maybe nervy ending as it was, because Jamaica, as it will transpire, did actually have quite a good chance to win the game, to level the game rather. But yeah, it was in a game of sort of few chances, moments like that you have to take full advantage of. We've heaped a lot of praise on Caicedo. She's been brilliant. She scored that amazing goal against Germany, but she's very young and very raw, and it's decision making in the final third. You have to be so ruthless. You're not going to be able to beat two defenders and score a worldie in every game, and it's moments like that which will hold her back. So it's she's young and she'll probably hopefully learn from that. Well, I say hopefully learn. Hopefully she doesn't, because obviously we got her in the quarterfinal. I quite like it if she keeps making mistakes against us. Certainly based on how we're playing at the moment. But for our long-term development beyond the World Cup, she'll learn from this. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, three World Cups in 12 months. It just says it all about her. 82nd minute, the 82nd minute comes along. Tiffany Cameron with a swinging cross into Drew Spence, heads it in wide, and as Matt said earlier, it's a little bit Spursy. Surely, Adam, if they were going to score, that was the moment to have that goal.
You always get one chance. It's one of the big cliches in football. You always get one big chance. This wasn't the game I watched. I watched the highlights of Simbak on the feed, and the comments was that was the moment. And it was all she has to do is just get her head in the right position, and it's a forward header. And I think maybe she tries to glance it a bit more to far post, and it just misses by, as the USA will tell you, millimeters. Curse you, millimeters. Curse the metric system.
I'm not too sure why Adam had an American accent there, but okay.
Because the Americans went out on millimeters. It was their moment. It was their chance. It was the one point. That was the point where if get that, it's 1-1, and I don't think they had a better chance for the rest of the match. And football is based on such fine margins. But it's been an amazing tournament for Jamaica. Let's take nothing away from it for what they've had to do with the the funding issues that's been sorted out with the public and the battle. There's so many teams who have done well at this tournament, and whilst having to arm wrestle with their own federation, whether it be with funding, whether it be with striking, whether it be with complaints raised about the management of their team, and they've still managed to get out of the group, get to a last 16, get a scalp, get an amazing result. They've not been battered 10, 20-0, whatever. They've done their nations proud. They've done their countrymen, they've done team proud, and Jamaica is another one. It's an amazing story, this World Cup for them, that sadly only took them as far as the last 16. But there's a lot to be proud of, and a lot maybe to look forward to for the next World Cup. They'll definitely take a lot away from this, but it just wasn't to be for this time around. They were close, and I think a 1-0 extra to Colombia, no shame in that. And maybe for the next World Cup, work on the shooting boots perhaps, and maybe we'll see where it goes from there.
This was one of the games, if you had to sum up the World Cup as a whole, the difference between federations, although some of them have the money, some of them don't have the money in Jamaica, it seems to be that there are small margins now, and that's not just the Americans being knocked out left, right, and centre, or Portugal hitting the post. It comes down. This is the tightest ever World Cup we're at ever. And Lottie, this is your first one. I've been watching since 2015. Adam, I think you've been watching since 2015 as well. I don't think we'll ever.
2011, but yeah.
Oh,
the
2011. I apologise.
You're absolutely right. The pool of club teams are bigger because we have the last 16 stage now. We're now up to 32 teams rather than say 16. But the margins between the haves and the have-nots is so much. There's so much. Teams are closer. They're closer than they've ever been before. We used to have 11-0 and 13-0 thrashings. That gap has just closed massively over the last 4 years, and that's brilliant to see. And it makes you wonder if these countries put proper funding in these teams. I mean, it's scary how easily they could maybe overtake Switzerland, Denmark. I mean, even England, if we're not careful. No team is beyond being,
no one is safe.
No one is safe. it's a cliche, another cliche in football, but there really are no easy wins in life. There are no bankers. If England had played Nigeria four years ago, we would have beaten them 3-0 like we did with, say, Cameroon. But we can't do that now. It's not simply you've got talent, you'll win. You have to have a bit more than that. And that is really good for the development of the game, that you can't just rely on individual talent to get you over the line and a coach who could just piece you all together and 11 together and just throw you out there. That you have to have so much more now, because these other nations coming through, they're going to catch you 100%. They're coming.
I think for me, the main talking point for me in this game was Khadija Bunny-Shaw. Like we saw her trying to hunt down that World Cup goal she desperately wanted, but for me, she just wouldn't look up at her teammates. It was just it's very much head down, charge forward, and that was it for me. If we look at her domestically, we talk about her for England first of all. Like Chloe Kelly isn't a person that's going to create for you. It's going to be Lauren Hemp coming into the middle, and that's exactly what Lauren Hemp does at Man City. Are Jamaica missing that Lauren Hemp type player, Matt?
I'd say yes, but again, it's a case of what they've got to put. I know I've said that some of these players are playing in Championship. Bear in mind, I wasn't trying to say like this, there's a difference in levels and things like that.
Absolutely not. I didn't take it like that. I promise you.
Just to clarify that, it's just a case of you play with what you got. Basically, I think the best way I can look at it is the Jamaican federations need to make sure that they're paying their girls, because this is absolutely bonkers how this has happened. And the only way they find their answers are through talent pathways. I look at there's people in the Women's Supporters Club at the moment that have little girls that are wanting to play football, whether it's going to be for Ireland, for England, for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, maybe it'll be for the Netherlands, maybe it might be for France, whoever in the world, but they'll be inspired by what's going on either now or in WSL or whatever league that they have access to. If Jamaica has eyes on the Football League and they're looking for more players, they need to make sure that they have them at grassroots and in their own leagues, or they make sure that they go over to America to get the experience, because that's where a lot of these players are now heading to. They're now realizing that Europe is the best place to be developing these players and going further forward, even if it means that in the case of, I believe it was Rebecca Spencer and Drew Spence, they do have English heritage, but either through their own heritage, they have Jamaican descent, which is it's just finding those teams. I think there are teams out there like Morocco on the men's side that do that, but if Jamaica are able to do that and find their own Lauren Hemp that way, it could be huge for them.
I mean, I was fuming with Charlotte getting a goal because I think I had her in my fantasy team and I was kind of banking on her to get me the points, but it wasn't to be. Yeah, I think Shaw is used in a specific way at Manchester City. They play in a special way, and it complements the way Khadija Shaw likes to play football. I don't think Jamaica play in that way. I don't think they play with the pacey wingers, with the passing, with whipping the crosses in. Bunny Shaw is that player, but for Jamaica, they are obviously a much more defensive unit, very low block, 3 clean sheets in a row. I just think, the way Jamaica played didn't complement Bunny Shaw. Maybe they need a Lauren Hemp player who can supply the way of, or another way of playing that would complement Shaw. It is a bit of a shame. I was hoping to see her on the score sheet for obviously my fantasy football team, and also because she is the icon of this Jamaican side, and you feel it would only be right if she got a goal. Sadly, the ideal game for her to get the goal, she got suspended for getting that red card. I think it was a second yellow against France, and I think it was Panama, wasn't it? The game they actually did win 1-0. That was the game. If Shaw was going to get her goal, it was that game, and it is a shame, but. I hope she's got another World Cup in her. There's one in 4 years' time. Hopefully, Jamaica qualify again, and we'll see how we do then with her.
No, absolutely. Last question for this section: what can we expect from Colombia coming up against England in the quarterfinals?
Go on, Adam.
Audio
Yeah.
listeners, I do apologise for that. That was very loud. It hurt my ears too.
I do apologise.
It was, I think, physicality, definitely. We saw how they played against Germany. Germany couldn't handle it. But pace, trickery, great passing. The way that Colombia, I think, if you want to get an idea what's going to be like, watch back Colombia versus Germany. Watch the way that Colombia were just able to pass around Germany with such confidence, despite players like having guys of Oberdorf in that midfield, and they were just able to bypass her, play out of presses, play counterattacks, so deadly on the counterattacks. And Caicedo, I mean, we've seen what happened to our talent, Lauren James. She is the equivalent of their Lauren James. England obviously played Colombia back in 2015 at the Canada World Cup. Sorry, in 2015, we won 2-1. Their goal came very late on the game. The game was already won by then. But I think this will be a step up. And England have been shaky. Let's not dress up another way. We beat China 6-1, but the other 3 games we've not been great. And whether we need to change back to back 4, we need to, we're going to change personnel again because obviously Lauren James is suspended. Serena's got to get this one right because we weren't great against Nigeria and we got lucky in a penalty shootout. If we play like that against Colombia, I am convinced the likes of Caicedo, the likes of Uzme, the likes of Ramirez, they will score. They will get a goal against us. But if we play that passively and that tamely as we did against Nigeria, we lost all our duels, we lost all the 50-50s. Colombia will beat us hands down, which makes it all the more exciting because we don't know what we're going to get with England. We don't know if we're going to get the China England or the Nigeria England, and hopefully we get the former, and hopefully we're up to speed. But this will be a real test for England, Serena.
This could be the equivalent of our Spain game.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say on that. It's so difficult to say, but that's all I'm going to say on that.
Yeah. Okay, no worries. All right, we will be back after this short break with our final game and final instalment of this episode, France v Morocco. We'll see you after the break. For the final instalment of the round of 16, France v Morocco. This game we kind of knew what way it was going to go. Debutantes vs a very experienced, revitalised France. It took them 15 minutes to get the first goal. Sakina Karuchai exploits the left-hand side with the amount of space, easily cushions the header in, the cross in for the header for Diani. Could the keeper have done more, Adam?
No, I think it was a brilliant piece of football from France. I think you're absolutely right. I think Morocco, I wouldn't say they were lucky, but it was such an amazing achievement for them to get out the group. But yeah, the moment they come against France, I think we all knew they were stuffed. Sadly, it would have been an upset of biblical proportions if they'd somehow managed to get through, but it wasn't to be. It was once that goal went in, he thought, right, it's the first of many, and so it proved. And that's a shame, but I don't think that's a slant on Morocco. I think it's amazing they got this far in the first place.
Absolutely. Goalkeepers Union, any thoughts?
I think it's down to that experience, really. Fair play to Morocco. They got to their first ever African Cup of Nations, but they didn't win it. And as much as it's more experience to get in this tournament than it is to play against other nations in your region, a continent even, it just means a lot more to be playing at the World Cup. You're playing against huge talents across the world. I think maybe with a little bit more experience or exposure to other football, it's going to help them in the long term, because the whole nation of Morocco have to be proud of their nation, because that's now 2 World Cups in a row that they can come away and gone, wow, we've had one heck of a tournament twice.
Absolutely.
I should say,
it's
just
like
World Cup.
To kick on.
Just going to say about that goalkeeper, Lottie. it has to be one thing or another. Either you come and claim the ball or you don't. And it looks like she got caught sort of in a halfway house, sort of went up to get the ball and then sort of watched it go past her. And I'm afraid with a lot of these teams, and we saw it with the South African team as well, goalkeeping has come on in such leaps and bounds in women's football that it's pretty much a non-subject when certain people like to come and beat it with a stick. And we can sort of judge the goalkeeping on goalkeeping and not the fact that it's women goalkeepers. But what we are seeing with a lot of these teams, they are underdeveloped, and you will get goalkeeping moments like this where there is an error, where there is a misjudgment or misjudgment of the cross, where it feels like it's basic errors. But that is simply down to the fact that teams like Morocco, teams like South Africa, they are behind us in funding. But as we said about gaps, that gap is closing. And goal, I'm 100% confident when next time we get the World Cup, a lot of these mistakes will have bled themselves out of the system because the coaching is there and it is getting better. But that, unfortunately, it is a bit of a gaffe from the keeper,
Definitely. Well, within the next 10 minutes, France's next 2 goals from Diani and Eugenie Le Sommer have come through. Diana's down the right acres of space with Eugenie Le Sommer in the middle. She pulls back the ball to find Kenza Dali for a right-footed shot from the centre of the box, bottom left of the goal in acres of space. And then we had, not 3 minutes later, Nesrine El Chad. She's being pressured by Diani on the edge of the box just before the ball goes out behind for a corner. She decides to try and pass it over to Nuala Benzina, and then it's kind of mispassed, and Eugenia somewhere ends up pouncing on it straight into the right side of the bottom left corner. Where has the defending gone at this point, or is it due to inexperience? Again, I don't want to sound so negative on them, but 3 goals within the space of 10 minutes is a lot to concede in that time.
It's a mixture of inexperience and fatigue. I think it's just this snowball effect of you're playing such a rampant, fluid French team, and it's a mismatch in levels. In boxing terms, it's a heavyweight versus a featherweight. They are at different levels, and I think it's just an accumulation. There's just mistakes coming in. We saw it with the goalkeeper, we saw it with the defender. Shout out for the Dali goal though. It's an amazingly placed finish and in off the post as well. It always looks better when it comes in off the woodwork, and that's just a splendid bit of football. But the third goal, it's the composure's gone, the structure's gone. It's an attempt to you have a play to your goalkeeper or concede the corner, but it's a suicide pass into the back of the box, and Le Sommer, a player of her experience, isn't going to turn that opportunity down. And I think it is simply inexperience. They've been gutsy and brave. They've got out of a group featuring Germany, which is amazing to finish a Germany group. Fair play to them, but they did get battered 6-0 by Germany, and I think we saw the roots of that battering in the French game, and just basics, mistakes. Again, it comes down to coaching and investment, and I'm sure those creases will get ironed out. But by that time it's 3-0. The game's as a contest is gone, and it's just Morocco playing out the last 2 minutes of what's been, I think we can say, a successful World Cup for them.
I wouldn't be surprised, sorry Lottie, that if we do see Morocco develop a lot better, I expect them to probably be at the next World Cup. I think they're pumping a lot more money into their football now, which is great to see, which means that they're going to get more exposure, as Adam's mentioned, about the coaching, those sort of experiences. We might see, maybe this season, maybe next season, we might see one of those Moroccan players also in the WSL. At the moment, it's only Azonzi of Tottenham, but maybe a few more of them might be turning up in the WSL soon.
Absolutely. Biggest world stage, managers are shopping. I think I've really looked at Morocco, and they've done really badly in this, but I have to say they've had moments of brilliance through Sakina Ozarai and also Gisèle Shabak. There was at one point there was some just over the halfway line in France this after some nifty footwork and dancing around the ball from Sakina Karuchai. Sakina Ozarai. I know I've just butchered that name. I do apologise. They both have the same name. And they basically dances around Serena Karuchai and Eugenia this summer, and then the pass goes back to Ghislaine Chibak, who crosses it in, but being a fantastic keeper, Pauline Perrand McGinn collects it comfortably, absolutely no problems. I do feel if they execute injuries like this more often, could they cause more problems in the future?
Yes. I think that moment does so they have the individual talent there. There is the potential there to do more, but I think it then comes down to coaching and planning. I'm not saying the coach from Morocco is terrible. They've managed to get this team into last 16, but I think we're probably seeing is the genesis of this Moroccan side. There is the foundations. There is stuff there to work with. There is individual talent there where you can do a spiral and beat some of the best French players, in the team with a bit of skill and open up a space for them. The problem is that the opportunities for them to do that in the game are nowhere near enough, and they don't know how to create the opportunities anywhere near enough. And I think that is what will need to be built on over the next 4 years. But it's a defeat, but there's plenty to be excited about. And I think just little moments like that just maybe gives us a little hint of what we can expect in 4 years' time.
That's going to be the one to keep an eye on, is how can they sustain this for the future. This team have broken down barriers, they have broken walls, they have broken buildings to not just only be there, but to make sure that on the world's biggest stage, they are being seen and heard and being applauded for what they're doing. I remember just thinking about this now. I think it was early 2000s. I was still at school, trying to say my age here. But they not Nike were going to be the ones that were going to do the sports head dressing for the Muslims, and that got a load of backlash at it. But
for the hijab.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and eventually when it was made and everything, it just became a natural thing. It was just natural. Now we're seeing a first player to wear one at a tournament. It's just you're not breaking those back. They're breaking down everything in their path just to be there. And whether it's Morocco, whether it's Jamaica, whether it's Colombia, whether it's Republic of Ireland, there are so many teams at this tournament that have broken those barriers and want to be there for their next moments and their next milestones. And this is one of the reasons why we love the World Cup in its most unique and purest form, because when you look at that World Cup it's not even a World Cup, it was in December, that winter Olympic style World Cup, I might as well call it, because that's essentially what it was.
In Qatar.
It wasn't really a World Cup. You didn't get that feeling, did you, that it was a World Cup?
Well, I would say technically, on a technical term, this Australian, New Zealand World Cup, technically that's a Winter World Cup as well. If you are in Australia, New Zealand, just put that in inverted commas.
But for the Europeans, you're not dealing with 16 degrees, are you? Most of the time over summer, it's usually up to 20.
Isn't that an average temperature for us though? For the summer anyway. But I do want to move on to the final goal in the 70th minute, which sort of sealed Morocco's fate. Yeah. Vicky Akers takes on Zinab Redouani, gets the cross into Eugene this summer, and she just tucks it away. I think we can all agree at this point it is game over for Morocco. They were going home. Little disappointing they didn't score, I'll be honest with you. But when you've got the likes of Eugene this summer and Wendy Renard returning to the starting lineup, you've not got much hope in terms of inexperience against them.
And I mean, this is the whole nonsense of the Diacre management and the fallout and losing players like Lissomer, so talented for the likes of Lyon and the likes of France. And you do think, back into that Euros where they got to the semi-final, one of the furthest they got the Euros. If they had Lissomer on the side, how different things could be. Really good news for France that she's obviously firing the goals in. I think it was 2 she got in the game, and now we've got a quarter final between France and Australia. I mean, if France are going to win, it's going to be down to the likes of Diani and Lissomer definitely to get them over the line. it's pretty clear that she's now in the mood for goals as well, which is a very exciting prospect.
No, absolutely. I mean, what can Morocco take from this tournament as debutantes, and what's next for them? Are they going to qualify for the next one?
You'd like to hope so. I think the next important thing is, can they show it again? Can they go to the African Cup of Nations and first of all qualify for that and compete for that title again? Or was it a one-off because they were a home nation? Let's wait and see about that. If they can then do that, they then qualify for the World Cup. They don't have to go through those intercontinental playoffs that were so fun and joyous to be part of. We still do not know where this next World Cup is. Let's bear that in mind, because that might mean that Africa do lose a spot if South Africa are chosen. The other options are Brazil, and I think it's France, Germany, and Belgium, or something, or somewhere around that line, has got a European bid for it. So I think we won't find that out until next year. So until then, I think it will just be baby steps. Make sure you qualify for the African Cup of Nations. And then make sure that you get to that semi-final, final.
I couldn't agree with you more then. I think all eyes are now on the Australia-France game.
Yeah.
This is going to be the first massive test for France. I think they've been in cruise mode to this point. Brazil wasn't a threat to them. Brazil's never beat them, and they weren't intended to allow them to win. Are France going to be this clinically ruthless with Australia, or are they in for a surprise from Australia?
I think this is probably the closest we're going to get to a sort of 50. It's a 50-50 split on this one. I think France have probably got the better technical players, but with Australia, they've got enough talent and they've got the home crowd behind them. Could tilt it over where I think this is going to be the biggest, most exciting quarterfinal. And it's quite, and I would say the quality of the quarterfinals, which I say is very, very good. In the lineup, I think it's England, Colombia, Spain. I think I've got the Netherlands. Spain, Netherlands, Japan, Sweden, and France, Australia. I think they are some absolutely stonking quarterfinal ties, and this one's going to be right up there with them. France have looked good, but I think you're right. I think they benefited from a soft group. I think Brazil were very underwhelming at this World Cup, and I think it showed. Morocco, not the most difficult size to turn over, and they did that rather well. I think Australia will be a real test for them, but I also think that France will be a real test for Australia as well. See how much they learned, how much they really are, set to go on. Obviously, they had that wobble against Nigeria when they lost. This will be the perfect test of both teams, really. I wouldn't be surprised if it went all the way to penalties of a score draw.
I have a feeling that it's going to be a battle of the midfield. Whoever can control that midfield is going to be able to get that ball supply and make sure that they do everything they can. The problem is France have been so far in cruise mode. They haven't been able to show their true colours. They could have quite easily just gone out in that second half, got 6 or 7 game set match, and then just carried it on. I would wonder if France are going to take the Nigeria approach and try and just and similar to what Nigeria did to us is what France are going to try and do to Australia, and see, because mainly Australia play 4-4-2. That suits Sam Kerr to a bone. She always likes being paired up with someone. If you can disjoint that a little bit with overpowering the midfield, either by playing a 3 or a 5 at the back, with the wing backs, whatever you want to call it. Maybe if you play a 5 in the midfield of 4-2-3-1 formation, that's another way France can easily dominate the game. They've got deadly. We know how deadly Wendy Renard has been from corners in the past, so that's another weapon in their arsenal. I'm not doing this on purpose, I swear. Lottie just smiled, by the way, for the audio
Are you
listeners.
sure? The
Wait.
Arsenal live rent free in our head says it is. Come on.
What are you suspecting that Wendy Renard is on her way to Arsenal because of that now?
No.
Absolutely not.
No, no, there's no rumours about that. But if anyone is curious, nothing's been said. I imagine she's going to stay in her careers at Lyon.
Forever.
But if I have to pick one player out, that's going to be the difference. It's got to be Kenza Dali. She's going to be the one that's got to unlock that Australia defence. She knows a lot of these players inside and out, and she's going to be the one. I've really enjoyed when she was at Everton, and then now she's at Aston Villa, similar role. And she does it so well because she's the one that's feeding Rachel Daly. She's the one helping out Jordan Nobbs. She's the one helping out Lucy Stanforth. She's the one helping out Alicia Lehman sometimes. And it's just going to be a battle of that midfield for me. I don't know what I could say about score-wise, but if you're going to twist my arm, I would probably have to say it's going to go to extra time. I'm going to say 1-1 for the moment.
I'm saying 2-2. I think it's going to be a ding-dong contest. I think it's going to be lots of goals. I think Sam Kerr will score, but I think it's going to seesaw, and it will go to penalties. And I'm not gonna. I have my idea. I have my own idea, the narrative that will penalties go, but I'm not going to say because I'm not going to put the mockers on it. So I'm going to keep it to myself, and I'll tell you if what happens is what I think happens.
Okay, no, I do think this is going to go into 80 and penalties. But I can't tell you who's going to score what. Sam Kerr is going to finally arrive at the World Cup with her goal or a penalty if she's subbed on.